if I'm not mistaken, all, uh, almost all, or all who are here are carers. Ibig sabihin, we provide service, we actually help. And when we are in the caring profession, which yun po ang intindi ko, please correct me if I'm wrong, no? Madalas na, actually understatement yung nauubos. Tama ho ba? Diba? Understatement yung nauubos. Ibig sabihin, ang dami-dami po natin ginagawa. Tapos hindi po natatapos yun sa trabaho. Tumutuloy din yon sa ating personal na buhay. Tumutuloy din yon in our social lives. So if you come to think of it, it never ever stops. And I'd like to introduce you to, I love saying this, no? It's really more than a concept, more than a theory, more than evidence-based, actually, but a way of life and a way of living. Because how will we care for ourselves, or what will we do if there's no downtime? If every single day of your life, you're actually caring for someone. And in this case, you're professionally providing this every time. And some of you work for 8 hours doing this nonstop. Some even the wee hours of the morning, madaling araw. There are even patients that would actually call, cry for help, SOS. What do we do? Okay, so it is a very short introduction to mindful self-compassion. If some of you have heard this already, Ivy has known this for quite some time. But for those who have not yet known about this, it is basically compassion cultivation training, part of the mindfulness-based programs or mindfulness-based interventions. Ibig sabihin, sinasali lang natin yung sarili natin in self-care. If we as carers, especially if this is your profession, palabas ng palabas yan every single time. And we forget that we also need to care for the one who is caring. We are just making ourselves part of that equation. And just a very quick invitation to ask oneself, how do we treat people who are suffering? How do we treat people who we care for? How do we treat our friends? How do we treat those who are so stressed out that it really counts that we're just there for them? So just even for a few seconds, asking yourself, how do I treat my patients? How do I treat those that I care for when they're struggling or they're suffering? Even when they're stressed, how am I there? And many answers, I just gave you a moment just to think, no? Many answers can come up. Yung iba, they give them a hug, a text, they call, even an act of compassion or an act of kindness, sitting beside them. I remember in wakes when I would ask a few friends or even a few clients in their grieving process, it is what stands out is actually the act of kindness and compassion. Nakaupo lang sa tabi nila, lang sinasabi. Tapos sinasabi lang, pag kailangan mo ko, andito lang ako. The assurance that they are safe with the company of this person. So that's basically different ways of how we treat others, especially when people are actually the ones having difficulty. But the invitation is to ask ourselves now, how do we treat us? How do we treat me? Okay? Paano ko tinatrato ang sarili ko kapag ako yung nahihirapan, kapag ako yung stressed? Are there certain patterns that I have na hindi nakakatulong kung paano ko, how I relate to myself? For instance, when I make a mistake, what is my relationship to a mistake? What is my relationship to me failing, to me not meeting a deadline, or for me to, let's say, I know that there's so much responsibility in our speech and the way that we communicate. what if madapa tayo na ang halimbawa ang kailangan natin gawin o maigi gawin is to reframe what they have said. What if sa pagod natin we were not able to do? What happens then? Especially, what is our internal space looking like? Anong itsura nito? And the reason why I wanted to show you these, because usually these things come up. It's the psychologist Rick Hanson who has famously quoted, "Nako, we are Velcro for the good or the positive, and baliktad po, Velcro for the negative, okay? And Teflon for the positive." That means when somebody actually says something good to us, or even assures us, validates us, more often than not, it bounces off. And if you come to think of it, if you have a friend and this friend has been with you, it can be a current friend, or maybe a friend you've had for years, and there are 5 outputs. When I say outputs, behavior, and the 5th is not sitting well with you. There's a tendency for us to remember what is the difficult one, what is the annoying one, what is the frustrating one. And this has a lot to do with how we think as human beings, us being naturally, naturally surviving, especially when we see things as a threat. So I'd like to show this, I'll go back to that, but I'd like to show this table that was created by Dr. Elizabeth Lin. She is also a teacher in mindful self-compassion in the University of Washington, a family physician. And I love showing this every single time because all of us find ourselves in the red or the orange zone. This is what we call our automaticity or our automatic pilot. When we are stressed, therefore having an effect as a threat, the threat can be internal or external, meaning to say it can be perceived or actual. Totoong tigre na humahabol sa atin, or pwede rin the way we perceive an event. For instance, we have traffic. We have somebody who cuts in line. Maybe, how about in a certain establishment where masks are required and then this person does it? So there are tiny things that can actually trigger us. And if we take a closer look of our stress reaction, ang nangyayari, meron tayong stress response turned outwards. Ibig sabihin, palabas. Marami sa atin, alam natin to, no? Yung fight, yung flight, or yung freeze, no? So it has an effect. Hindi ko na kailangan po isa-isahin because as you can see here, there is an activation in the whole system. We feel it in our bodies, whether we are aware of it or not. And then it goes through our own coping mechanisms. Now, coping mechanisms are not bad. It is when these mechanisms cause harm that it becomes bad coping. And I know a lot of you, if not all, are familiar with that, especially with the people that you work with and the people that you serve. Thus, going to maladaptive coping, and then the breakdown, iba-iba po ang version ng overwhelm, iba-iba po ang version ng breakdown. Ang nangyayari po ngayon, nakikidagdag po siya, or it adds on to an additional stressor to the original one, to the original trigger, okay? So without being aware, or sometimes we're aware but we don't know what to do with it, it now loops into a stress cycle. Paulit, paulit, ng paulit. Now, the invitation here is to see that we can actually cultivate practices that can turn into habits, habits that can turn into skills, and skills that can turn into resources, so that our brain will know that there are other options to bring us back to Violet. Please know that this is not the only intervention or not the only program that can work. There are many, many, but I'm just excited to introduce you to one of them, okay? Especially when it comes to burnout of carers. So if we look at, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you have questions, please just type it in the chat box, whether it's for public or private. For private, I just won't name your name, so that I can go back to it later on and address it in Q&A. Okay, so going back to what I was saying, the purple. Kung nakikita po natin, meron pong epekto rin. Meron epekto yung ating mga way of relating to. The way we see things, the way we approach, most especially to ourselves. Okay? So there is also this effect, not only in the hormones, in our all the glands, circulatory system, endocrine, nabanggit ko na po, digestive, respiratory, and so on. No? Now, with that, I like really using the term expanding our toolbox. If you already as a professional have many in your toolbox, hindi natin sinasabi na isang tabi niyo po yun. Ang sinasabi po natin, ngayon, pwede niyo po dagdagan pa ng mas maraming tools, which we will experience later. And then we see new possibilities, especially of how we care to ourselves. Therefore, going to the goal. The goal of this introduction is to see the possibilities of increasing well-being and seeing our own quality of life, making informed choices in our quality of life. Okay? I go back now to the previous slide. So what is self-compassion? Earlier, I just explained to you the informal definition. It's basically treating a friend, treating ourselves how we treat a friend. Okay? Sinasali lang natin yung sarili natin sa equation, dun sa circle of compassion. But when we talk about self-compassion, this is the formal explanation comprised of three components. The stress response that you see on the left is usually outwards. Okay? Ang dali-dali natin sabihin, okay, pwede natin express ang ating boundaries, even though mahirap din gawin yun sa ibang tao. But what I'm saying is, it's easy to actually say for others that, okay, no, I cannot do this because, okay, or it's not going to be good for me. Okay, so that's an example of, let's say, a particular stress response that can be non-adversarial. Kasi pag nakita po natin yung fight, there are two kinds of fighting eh. Merong adversarial, palaban talaga. Meron naman adversarial. Ibig sabihin, you can be expressing your boundaries in a more compassionate way and so on. And then we have flight. And dun nakikita yung ghosting. Diba yung iba pa nga, oh, nasa cancel culture na tayo ngayon. We can cancel, di ba? We don't like somebody, okay. Just recently, marami po akong kliyente who've gone through conflicts in their families with their friends because of recent events in our nation. And a lot of them canceled each other. A lot of them actually ano bang mga term ho na yun? Unfriended or left the group and so on. And then we have freeze, not doing anything about it. So what I'm saying is we see a lot of these outwards. But I invite you to see that there is a stress response turned inwards when the inner ally can now become the inner enemy. This is when our nervous system reacts and says, okay, I'm dealing with a threat now, but the threat is towards the self-concept. So what do we do? Okay. You see this in a lot of your patients and a lot of people that they care for, that they're very highly critical of themselves, very, very harsh. It can even present itself physically. Lethargy every day, not wanting to get up, konti lang pagkakamali, hindi na malaman kung anong gagawin. It's already catastrophized in the mind. So these three responses turn inwards. We have self-criticism or self-judgment, the way we relate to ourselves. And for those, I actually have an anxiety disorder, and I also suffered from depression before. And one of the things, I don't know if for your patients and also for those who have suffered in the past, it feels very lonely. Meaning to say, you don't really meet somebody who has anxiety or depression or other mental states who say, this is so awesome. I really feel that I belong in a larger group of human beings and I like it very much. I don't hear that. Why? Because when we are going through a lot of these things within ourselves, it feels na parang nag-iisa lang tayo. In a panic attack, parang nag-iisa lang tayo. Kasi yun talaga, yung sarili talaga ang the one experiencing it. Okay, so that's just an example out of many examples of isolation. And then we have rumination. And please know, rumination is not bad. Okay, there's also creative rumination. That's how musicians write their beautiful masterpieces, painters, sculptors, creators, so inventors, di ba? Pero ang pinag-uusapan po natin is the rumination that is unhelpful, that can be catastrophized into a novel. It is the story. It can begin as a thought. Sometimes these thoughts also have speed, ang bilis-bilis sa utak natin. And then later on, na siya, narrative na paulit-ulit. Okay. So, I'd like to invite you to just experience this through hand gestures, what self-compassion is. Okay? Sandali lang po to, mga maybe about 2 minutes. Okay? So, if you are comfortable doing this with your eyes closed, please do so. If not, okay lang na nakabukas yung kamay. Okay. The invitation is for every single gesture to ask ourselves, how is this for me? Like, anong pakiramdam when I do this? Okay. So first, close your fist as hard as you can. Making sure hindi po kayo masusugat dun sa mga kuko, ha? Pero just close it. And then ask yourself, ano bang pakiramdam nito? Right now, I can feel my whole body tensing up to my shoulders. Okay? But that's me. And just asking yourself, ano ang pakiramdam nito? Now, open your palms. Just face it upwards. How is this for you? Becoming aware also of the changes in the body from a closed fist to an open fist. And now extend your arms, parang bitin na bear hug. How is this for you? And then last but not the least, put one hand on top of your chest and the other hand just resting. And as you breathe, asking yourself, how is this for me? Okay, so if your eyes were closed, opening them, what you just went through are just the hand gestures of self-compassion. Kasi ito po, yung closed fist, kung nakikita niyo po ako sa camera, ito po yung autopilot natin. This is when we are stressed, like go, 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 go. Okay? Please remember, wala pong mali sa pagiging stressed. In fact, it has a purpose. What we're talking about here is the toxic stress that we have kung hindi na po nasi-switch off 24/7. Okay? And then, this is the gesture for mindfulness. Knowing or becoming aware to what is here in your present moment, which is either good or bad, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, but just becoming aware of what is here for you. Then we have stretching our arms as if between a bear hug. This actually shows common humanity or the shared human experience that we all have with each other. That nobody is alone in their experience. We may not know that another person is suffering the same way as we are, but the reality is we're not alone. There's always someone or many, okay? And then we have self-kindness. It's basically reminding ourselves that, oh, we can actually choose or start being kind to ourselves. So these can actually translate to a practice, and we will be experiencing that in a bit. No? Okay. So I'd like to introduce you to a foundational practice in mindful self-compassion called soothing touch. Others call it supportive touch just because they're more comfortable with that. So in your mind, kung anong mas komportable sa inyo. In 2009, si psychologist Paul Gilbert, who started compassion-focused therapy, and right now, many researchers already and neuroscientists are seeing the effect of mammalian caregiving system. And what does this mean? For those of you who are parents, or for those of you who have nieces, nephews, apo, kung sino man, pagka umiiyak ang anak nyo, or when you recall in the past, at kinarga nyo, usually tumitigil. Pag tumitigil po yung bata, and they've seen this research with chimpanzees, no? Which are also mammals, pag nakikita nila mammals in general na iba-iba nilang pinag-aralan, tumatahan. And actually, that's our natural opiates and oxytocin at work. Okay? Ibig sabihin, nagre-release. So, kung i-comfort kayo, let's say dun sa exercise kanina, how do you treat a friend, just to reflect how it feels when we are the one supported, okay? Even when we are giving support, tatabi lang tayo, makikipag-holding hands tayo, it feels pretty good, right? It feels na, ay, ang sarap. Ay, parang nandyan lang siya. And we can verbalize this maybe, but actually, the mammalian caregiving system is being activated. The natural release of opiates and oxytocin. And what they saw is when we give these gestures now to ourselves, it activates also the natural opiates and oxytocin. Very interesting, right? And the mammalian caregiving system is activated with two things: gentle vocalizations and soothing or supportive touch. So I invite you now, this is just for a few minutes, mga siguro 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes of soothing touch. For each gesture that I will take you through, inviting yourselves now to ask, or giving yourselves permission to ask, kamusta to para sa akin? How is this for me? Okay. So inviting you to close your eyes. I like saying inviting because it's always the call of the human being to do so. And just taking a few deep breaths, breathing in and breathing out. In and slowly breathing out. And let's begin by holding your own hand, holding hands with yourself. How is this for me? And now moving one hand to rest on the belly, sa chan. And as you breathe, how is this for me? Now putting that other hand in the belly. And see if it's okay to embrace this part, your belly. Maraming pinagdadaanan dyan. Digestive system, so many organs that are there. How is this for me as I give myself a gentle hug or even just supporting myself this way? And now putting one hand on your heart. How is this for me? Letting the other hand now that was in the belly join the hand on the chest. How is this for me? And now crossing both arms in your chest, squeezing your arms, rubbing them if you like. And how is it now to give a hug to yourself? How is this for me? Remember, you don't have to like all the gestures. The invitation here is to be aware of how every single gesture is for you. And now moving to sometimes or a lot of times where stress resides, or shoulders. How is it like to rest the hand on our shoulders? How is this for me? And then the other hand, the other shoulders, including your nape. How is this for me? And now one hand on one cheek, the other hand on the other cheek, and asking yourself now, how is this for me as I cradle my own face? And last but not the least, if you like, putting one hand on your lap and the other hand stroking your head, stroking your hair or your head, and asking yourself, how is this for me? And now I segue to the next practice. If your eyes are still closed, continuing to do so, remembering the soothing or supportive touch that you liked, or it can be your own, something that I didn't mention, but you already support yourself that way through a gentle gesture. So, inviting you to think of a stressful or difficult situation for you. Could be right now, or it could be in the past, but a difficulty scale or a stressful scale of 3 to 5 out of 10. As we begin to learn the skills of self-compassion, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves yet. So just light enough to feel it in the body. Perhaps meeting a deadline, or maybe doing a chore that you haven't done yet, maybe something on your to-do list. And as you think about this, noticing how your body feels, remember that there is no right or wrong way to practice. Just inviting you to notice whatever is there for you, okay? And if you'd like to practice this with your eyes open and a soft gaze downwards, that's completely fine. And when you're ready, acknowledging now that hardship or that difficulty, even if it's mild to moderate, this is tough. This is difficult, or that was stressful. When we say this to ourselves, this is already a practice of mindfulness. We validate, we acknowledge what's there. And now inviting to say to ourselves, human just like me, breathing just like me. Other people get stressed just like me. Other people also struggle and suffer and feel pain just like me. And when we introduce specific words of this shared human experience we all have, this is actually common humanity. And last but not the least, inviting you now to use the gesture that you've discovered, or maybe that you've been doing before. For instance, the hand on the heart. For me, a personal favorite is the hand on my belly. So choosing for yourself. And then, when you're ready, inviting you to say, may I be kind to myself? Or may I begin to be kind to myself? May I give myself what I need? And there are times when we're overwhelmed and burned out, we don't really know what we need. May I continue to be kind and compassionate with myself. And it can even be your own words. And when you're ready, slowly opening your eyes, welcoming yourself back. So those are the two foundational practices. We had about 3 minutes of soothing touch, and then we went to self-compassion break. Kaya siya tinawag na self-compassion break kasi sandali lang siya, mga 5 minutes of giving ourselves a break. Using, pakita ko lang po ulit yung slide using actually these three things: mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. So we experience this through gestures, and we also experience this through the formal practice of self-compassion break. So please chat in kung kamusta po. How was that for you? How was soothing touch? How was self-compassion break? I'd love to know kung na-practice nyo po, ano po ang direct experience para po sa inyo. Okay. So while we are waiting for others to share how that was for them, I'd like to move forward kasi nga para lang makarami po yung ating matututunan for this morning, no? Okay. So before I go this, we will end with this. Very quick lang din po to. Mga 3 to 4 minutes of giving and receiving compassion. But before we do that, I'd like to show how our repeated practice, kasi remember, as we give ourselves permission to do this, to repeatedly doing this every single day, whether we have a good day or we have a bad day, it's like riding a bike or it's like swimming. Hindi naman ibig sabihin, nagawa natin itong intro na to, ibig sabihin po, pagka the moment we are experiencing stress or difficulty, maalala na natin kaagad. We also need to build neural structures, and I know a lot of physicians know this, no? That without installation, without turning passing mental states into enduring neural structures, there is no learning or no change in the brain. So we need to also activate it. Kasi ibig sabihin, activate, umpisahan natin, pero kailangan din natin i-install. So activation without installation of any practice, any habit we wish to form, hindi lang pwede natin sabihin sa sarili natin na dahil gusto ko, yun lang yung gagawin ko. Why? Because life is not all pleasant. There are some things that we do repeatedly of every single day because we choose to do it, not because they are pleasant. For instance, a lot of people started cooking even though they don't like cooking. A lot of people started driving even though they don't like driving. They commute not because they want to, but it makes them reach their workplaces para hindi sila malate. Okay? Now, so a self-reflection question is, what fraction of your beneficial mental states ever become neural structures? Because we can also experience dependent neuroplasticity. Di ba neuroplasticity is changing the brain. The brain, plastic. Kaya nga plasticity kasi changing. That's what they saw. Na as repeated practice is being done, ang nangyayari, we experience these neural structures na nag-iiba. No? So we can use the mind to change the brain and to change the mind for the better to benefit ourselves and other beings. Of course, we know that in your patients, iba, meaning to say, kayo pong experts doon on how you care for them. But for this po kasi, it is for you, for the carer, to include yourself so that you don't become overwhelmed and burn out in what you are already doing. Okay? So last but not the least, I'd like to end in one of, I would say, I use this every day because I serve every day. I teach every day. And this, ang maganda po kasi dito, this is the practice. I will be teaching you its few-minute version and its no downtime version. Ibig sabihin, kaharap mo, yung nahihirapan ka, yung pasyente na kinakausap mo, what will you do then? Okay? So, this is one of the practices we use to bring oneself back to equanimity, to remember your own balance, and also, if repeatedly doing this can increase resilience and reduce burnout. So this is giving and receiving compassion. This is also a practice called loving others without losing ourselves. And if you are comfortable closing your eyes now or doing a soft gaze downwards, whichever works for you, taking a few deep breaths as you slowly inhale and slowly exhale. Breathing in and breathing out. A frequently asked question is, how come in practices sometimes we have to bring up a difficult situation to mind? It's because when the real difficulty comes, the brain will remember that it has options during the difficulty. Okay. So just finding your own natural breathing rhythm, meaning to say how you normally breathe. Just continue feeling the sensations of both breathing in and out. And now we will put like a spotlight, a gentle spotlight on breathing in. Okay. Focusing our attention in our in-breath right now. Letting ourselves savor the sensation of breathing in. Perhaps even noticing how it energizes the body because we are giving ourselves what we need, which is oxygen. The process of giving ourselves what we need first. And if you like, as you breathe in, you can include an intention of kindness and compassion towards yourself. It can even be a gesture. You may choose to put a hand in your heart if you like. Just savoring, even if it's the beginning intention to be kind to yourself. And now we focus or put the spotlight on breathing out, our out breath. So, still normally breathing, but just a little bit of spotlight with breathing out and just feeling the ease of releasing, exhalation. Now, inviting you to call to mind a loved one or someone you are caring for who is struggling and needs compassion. It could be in your personal, social, or professional life. It could be one human being. It could be a living being, for instance, a pet who is suffering. Or it could be a group of people. Begin now to direct your out breath to this being or beings, offering the ease of breathing out. If you wish now, sending kindness and compassion as you breathe out to that person or beings. One breath after the other. And now, including the sensations of both breathing in and out. So earlier, if the spotlight was in breathing in and it moved to the spotlight of breathing out, now we are including both in the spotlight, breathing in and breathing out. Beginning now to breathe in for yourself and out for the other. In breath for me, out breath for you. In for me, out for you. One for me, one for you. In this very moment, I'd like to invite you now to give the ratio that you need. To bring yourselves back to equanimity, that means there are times that we are out of balance or we're just so tired. If that's the case for you, breathing in 1 million for me, breathing out 10 for you. Sometimes we find ourselves with more resources, more strength, maybe rested. If this is the case, you may wish to give a ratio. For instance, 20 for me, 200,000 for you. And it could be an equal flow. So asking yourself right now, in this very moment, what ratio can I give to myself to bring myself back to balance? Exploring now any number, any words of adjusting your own ratio of giving and receiving as you breathe in for you and breathe out for the other. Remember that there's no right or wrong ratio in this very moment. What is it that you'd like to give in to yourself and give out to the other? And just allowing your breath to flow in and flow out, just like the ocean going in and going out, this limitless, boundless flow of compassion that embraces all struggle, embraces all stress, and embraces all suffering. Breathing in and breathing out. One for me, one for you. Kindness for me, kindness for you. Compassion for me, compassion for you. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes. If your eyes were closed, welcoming yourself back. And please keep the chats going. If there's a question or feedback, I'd really like to know how that was for you. That was giving and receiving compassion. Very quickly, what is the shortcut version if there is no downtime? Okay, if there is no downtime while you're with your patients, in that very moment, breathing in for yourself and breathing out for the patient. And what I love about the ratio practice of giving and receiving compassion, kasi in that moment, mabibigay mo na sa sarili mo. I remember I had a client, 2 years na na-stroke yung dad dahil sa pandemic, walang nag-aalaga sa kanya. So, ang isa sa kanyang mga strong beliefs, no, is how dare I smile when my father can't. So I will not smile at all. And one of the things that was hugely transformative for her is this practice of giving and receiving compassion, because siya yung nagte-therapy, siya yung nagmamasahe, siya yung bumubuhat. And as she has no downtime, one of the things that she has said that it really did help dahil nag-iiba-iba talaga yung ratio para lagay niya yung sarili niya sa equanimity o sa tinatawag natin yung sarili nating siso, di ba? Minsan ganito tayo, minsan ganito, minsan ganyan. Okay?